Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this presentation this afternoon during ICW. Lots of familiar names here. I'm happy to see you guys join us. I'd like to introduce you to Fiorella Valade. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Fiorella. Fiorella is a PCC ICF certified executive coach, emotional intelligence organizational consultant, and stress resilience educator with more than 15 years leading people's transformation in a variety of industries and multicultural settings. She has led and contributed to high-performance teams from a diverse portfolio of Fortune 500 brands, including Vacheron Constantin, Markstar Corp, and EDMC Corporation. Fiorella's coaching and facilitation practice encompasses a wide range of programs and initiatives focused on individual development, team building, well-being, organizational design, and membership that have enhanced the performance of individuals, executives, teams, and organizations around the world. Throughout the years, Fiorella has attained several advanced certifications, which have provided a solid foundation for becoming an ally in the transformation of others, starting with herself. Her facilitation and coaching style draws from evidence-based methodologies such as emotional intelligence, 6 Seconds Emotional Intelligence Network, mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR, from Duke University, heart resilience from Heart Math Institute, Mind Body Somatic from SE Institute, and more recently, Grief Education from the Death Doula Training, the Open Center. Fiorella is a 6 Seconds Regional Network Director for 6 Seconds LATAM and leading global emotional intelligence organization with presence in 174 countries. Also, through her private coaching practice, she has partnered with BetterUp as a fellow coach and facilitates executive coaching and leading organizations in diverse industries, including Capital One, Visa, Navy, Federal, YPO Network, Significant Health, Google, Squarespace. The list goes on, including the US Air Force. Fiorella, welcome. Thank you for offering this presentation and taking the time to be here with us today. And I will hand the mic to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes, we can hear you well. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Oh, wow. It's great to see you all today. Thanks for coming. And I'm very happy to present this workshop. Actually, I don't know if I'm connected to this, or you can hear me well like this.
I can hear you fine either way.
Okay, good. So, okay, perfect. So, well, thanks for coming. And this is a very special material for me. And it was a very special journey. And I'm very happy to share with all of you. I found that my doula training throughout this long prompt of my life experience that Shaki has read, and it was like overwhelming to hear that. Wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't have the same context and value for my clients, for myself, for my circle, without this experience of becoming a death doula. And I think that was a huge before and after in my life. And so I'll proceed to share with you. I think you all can see that. Oh, no. Someone else is entering the room.
Yep, I'll take care of it.
Okay. So let me see. Great. So I learned a couple of things in this journey, and the most important thing was my capacity to stay with emotions. And I work for a nonprofit, a global nonprofit that teaches emotional intelligence all over the world. And I thought I was well versed in dealing with emotion, handling emotion, and navigating emotions. But through a number of things that happened in my life, through in a couple of years, starting with COVID, and I realized that I needed to be better at dealing with grief. And I found grief in my clients, in many of the issues that we were discussing at that time. And then I had some personal losses. So I entertained the idea of become a death doula. I mean, and I think my grief was so prevalent and so profound and so deep that I decided to go into this, right? And along the way, this is a quote that I read at some point and inspired me to start. This idea that man, it's really adds value to its experience by all the range of emotions, by feeling everything, by experiencing, by navigating, by exploring. And there is a very big difference between suffering as itself, but suffering without a meaning. And I realized that the meaning of my suffering had a message for me. So, and the message was basically, you need to learn to stay. You cannot go into this space where, okay, this is sad, this is grief, I deal with this, I have the strategies, I have the toolkit, I snap out of it. Because by snapping out of it, I felt that I was coming out of my own integrity, my commitment of living life fully. So what have I learned from grief? Really, from grieving, from delving myself into this training, which is, I mean, a journey in itself. I didn't know, honestly, what I was getting into until 2 or 3 months gone by, and I had to go into these experiences and practices and speak to so many people about their grief and their losses. So I can still these 5 practices, which some of them I already had some context for, but I really became much more aware that I needed to stay in this. And then I found this relevance with our precepts, our foundations in ICF. And how do I develop presence? How do I become much more into a coaching mindset? I have a background in psychology, in developmental psychology. I'm not a clinician, but in psychology, we learn to diagnose. And the more we talk to people, and the more I realized that I was in this space of hearing different stories, I got to a point that I'm like, okay, I know what's going on. And honestly, I didn't know what was going on with me. So I had to start first with me. So I came out with these 5 practices that I think they were pivotal for me to go and explore more into these doors, right? The first one, I think, has a lot to do with my willingness to listen, okay? And it was a first person wish, and I felt that as a coach, I was trained to listen, but how comfortable I have became with my listening that I realized that I was running automatic pilot. All this grief, how it affected my clients and all that. So I decided to go and start with that. And I came out with this story listening, because as coaches, we do a lot of active listening, right? But you also become storytellers, because we're fed with so many stories and all the successes and all the grievances of our clients, right? So how do I make sense of this repository of life for me, for my own meaning? And I came out with story listening because as good as I am for telling stories, I wanted to be able to be there, to be a compassionate listener for someone, not judging, not putting labels. So I decided to use this with myself. And in the Death Doula training, we have to be quiet for a long time. We don't have to come up with explosive questions, with the most powerful takeaway. We just have to be there. It's not really even a quality of saying something right. It's just it's being there in presence, in body. We did a lot of these practices online, and it was very powerful, our ability to hold the space online. So we all know storytelling, and we all know active listening. This is kind of the marriage between the two of them. So in story listening, something that I found particularly important was my embodied practice of breathing. Whenever I wanted to say something, whenever I was going to interrupt myself, right? Or just project it in a different way in the person. And in 6 seconds in our coaching school, we have a very interesting practice. And when we found that we are talking too much, we really, we have some different things that we can do with our hands. But my favorite one is I start lifting my finger. Like I'm talking and I start lifting my finger. So I realize that if I'm lifting my finger too many times, I'm occupying too much space. So this is a storytelling. Then this other practice was about telling myself that there's time for feeling stuck. I don't have to run. I don't have to move. How this translated with my clients? Well, sometimes we have sessions where our clients are stuck. And next session comes and they're stuck. And they might be around 4 or 5 sessions where they still have the feeling or their perception of being stuck. In my own journey, I found out that it is okay sometimes to be stuck. Because when we're grieving, when we're experiencing grief, there's not a timeline. We all have that idea that it's a cycle, that it's a process. And my training taught me that grief, it's an emotion. It's not a process. It goes along with joy. For the longest time, we think that we're different experiencing joy and grief. And this Brené Brown amazing research show us that people experience joy in a very similar way as they experience grief. If we are waiting for the shoe to drop, that problem is going to happen. And in our idea of grief. So I gave myself that compassion. That feeling stuck was okay. Now, we can all think, oh, well, how long is being okay? How I am not being an effective coach, right? But it's in the process of a story listening, I'm listening for the cues. And I'm also understanding that maybe I need help. So this took me to my next step, was recognizing complexity. As a coach, with all these years under my belt, with the experience that I had from working with this big and so important nonprofit, I can say, well, yeah, I have the tools. And sometimes I get that. Or I have clients that are very well versed in the process of coaching, and they have the tools. But the complexity doesn't account for that, or vice versa. So how do I recognize that in this complexity, I'm a human that is grieving? I'm a person that needs support. And we all have created networks. We all have created, well, we have ICF, we have our peers, we have our circles, we have our families, our friends. We need to understand that even though we have the tools, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're ready to take action. So in between this space, there is this subliminal opportunity for rebirth, for reframing things differently, for taking a space and from bringing people together. In our coaching, this translates in maybe recognizing that our client needs further help, that we don't have the resources. That is something that maybe the person is going through some mental health issues. So it's recognizing our limitations. I personally recognize my limitation in dealing with that, and I sought for help. And even though when I look for help and when I recognize my own limitations, there was this temptation of feeling, in a way, wanting to feel or portray resilience, right? Now, what is resilience? It's not the ability to bounce back or the ability to really learn and become stronger in the process, become much more wiser in the process. So the only way for me to do that was to keep a strong back but a soft front, keep myself open. And normally when we grieve, the tendency is to close up. And it's a human mechanism. We retrieve ourselves. But the Death Doula training gave me no opportunity, gave me no room to go back. I couldn't cut my emotions when I was tending to someone. I practiced in hospice for 6 months. And I still go, I'm still on call, although I'm not going, I used to go 6 hours a day for a period of 2 months because I really wanted to delve into this. And I had my first 2 weeks were, I mean, really the heart of the doula training, because everything that could happen happened in that place. And I have to keep myself open to my own resistance. This is where I realized that I had a lot of resistance to things that I consider myself, pass through. So the more I learn myself and I create and I evoke awareness for me, I could be better for my clients. I could show them that they can still be open and just model that. This practice of compassionate inquiry, having a strong back, but keeping a soft front, allow us to keep the compassion for ourselves and for others. And whether I feel stuck or I feel that I need more help, if I close myself up, I close myself to that possibility as well. I wonder if anyone has a question. I don't see anything in the chat. Kit?
Nothing so far. I want to encourage everyone, if you have questions throughout, feel free to raise your hand or, of course, put it in the chat, whatever works for you, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona.
And then the fifth one. This was an invitation to deepen my reflective practice. And this was a very interesting one because I started asking, and I even put a survey out there for people. And I asked my fellow coaches, how often do you reflect? How often do you think about the sessions, right? And I know we all lead very busy lives. And I realized in my own practice, right, with my training and where I was still keeping a full role of clients plus facilitation. Sometimes I didn't give myself enough time for really deepening into reflective practice. And this is going into questions from a different angle, from a different perspective. I had a journal that had the questions, and one of those journals that you buy on Amazon, but I was responding to the same questions, so it became very mechanic. It became the same thing over and over. So I decided to really combine my feeling of grief, what I was seeing, the intensity of what I was seeing, and kind of turn them up into the reflective practice. And not just reflecting on what the client told me or what are the skills I use or what competencies I stressed, but also how that projected on me. How was that I was using my own resources, myself as an embodied resource to tend to that client. And that really was also a game changer because I mean, I increased my journal, and I doubled it up by 2-3 notebooks that I shouldn't use in 1 year. You know, I finished them in 3 months. I started writing a lot. And by that writing, I start also finding a space within myself and finding healing and finding closure in my own issues. So it was very interesting seeing that the more I attended the hospice, I had more space for this, for more reflective practice. And I was still moving and I was still going on my life. So this is very important for us. This is really something that I found that it really condensed all the learnings and things that I'm still reflecting about. I have
Fiorella, we have a few questions before we continue. Maybe one question from Marianne is, could you please take a moment to describe what the role of a death doula is? I think I know, but I don't want to assume.
Yes. Thank you for that question. Well, the death doula is someone that will walk the journey of the process of dying with the person that is dying, with the relatives. It can be either way or both. Some people will volunteer in hospices and they be there to just sitting with the person, especially when they go into the active process of dying. So people get in hospice and sometimes it's 1 month, 2 months, 1 week, 3 days, right? But there is a moment where the doctors know this is happening. The body, when it's a terminal illness, for instance, the body starts reacting in a way, and we know this. So we go in there and we do videos and we see. There's also the need to tend to the families, and there's also the need to speak about difficult issues like, okay, do you have your directives? Do you have your paperwork ready? Is there something that you want to write or you want to convey to your family members? How do you want your burial to be? And I had very interesting conversations with people there. They're not in hospice yet, and you don't have to be in hospice to talk to a death doula about these things. So basically, when you're talking about living will and directives, you're talking to a coach. You're talking to a compassionate story listener that is going to help you convey how you want to do one of the 2 more important things that we do in life. One is to be born, and the other is how we exit. And it's a sacred moment. And there are many values that we discuss on the table. From how do I want to be buried, how do I want the ceremony to be? Do I want butterflies in my funeral? So throughout the training, you learn not just how to support family members, but you also, according to the state that you are, you learn some of the legal paperwork that is needed to accomplish certain things. We also learned about racialized grieving, how different communities mourn differently, and how is grief contained in different spaces. We learned about home funerals and how you prepare the body, pediatric death. It was very, very comprehensive. Yeah, I hope that answered your question. But one big thing about this death doula training is that at any point, any one of us can have a conversation with a death doula coach, because it's really a space that if you want to plan, if you have an objective, you have a goal, you just can go and tap into that.
Then there's one more question from Larry. Thank you for that. The question is, what specific takeaways do you have from your Death Doula training pertaining to making you a more capable coach?
Great question. Thank you. I think that above and foremost is this quote that I found from Viktor Frank, right? Is this, okay, I'm suffering here. Just, I mean, this is sport. What is that I'm doing here? How can I learn from this? How can I become better? How can I be more present with life? What is that I'm numbing in myself that maybe it's not allowing me to see my clients in their full humanity? So I think that my training took me to my full humanity. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now I'm curious to know about these 5 practices, right? We all reflect and have some awareness of all these things. But is there something that you feel that you can tap into and become much more comfortable with grief, in becoming much more comfortable with grief itself? Well, you can answer this question in the breakout rooms. Okay. We have created 5 breakout rooms, and you are free to choose. And hopefully we all have a partner. If not, we'll try to make some moving. But in the breakout room, you're going to, I'm going to share the slides with you in the breakout room somehow. And you're going to share. But this is the thing. We're going to share practicing story listening. Okay? We're just going to listen without interjecting, just not even nodding, not even saying anything. The person that talks shares their experience, and then the others say thank you, and then they go and they move into the next one. Okay? And we're gonna, I think we have 10 minutes to do it, and we're good in time, right? And every breakout room has a name. So if you find, I mean, hopefully you all find someone in the breakout room. Okay, so you're going to share about how can you deepen into grief using one of these practices. Which one will you think will be more appropriate for you in this moment?
If we can maybe ask, is everyone who's joining us, or if there's anyone who's not okay in joining the breakout room, maybe raise your hand. Sylvie notes that she will not be able to do practice right now. So anyone else? You can put it in the chat, or Greta won't be able to join the practice.
But we'll be sharing the slides so you can go over maybe later.
Okay, so I think so it's,
yeah, we're going to share the 5 practices. Don't worry, because once you get in the name, every breakout room has a name for the practices. I think so.
yeah.
Yes.
Are you all able to see the breakout rooms with the names?
One is storytelling, time for feeling stuck, recognizing complexity, a strong back, soft front, and deepening reflective practice. And I wonder if you all can see it.
Can you all thumbs up or let us know? Do you have the ability to see the breakout rooms?
I don't see the breakout rooms.
Okay. No. All right.
So shall we assign them like randomly?
I think we have to do broadcast. Is broadcast the way to do it?
No, broadcast is to send a message. So I will assign them. Okay, this will be like totally chance, all right? And
Sylvie was not able to participate, remember?
okay, if I put someone that can participate in a group, just I'll move it. I'll move that person. Don't worry.
Okay.
Let's see. Mm. Do you want me to get you in a room? Oh, everybody went. Good. Welcome back.
I think everybody should be back.
Yeah. Oh, thanks for sharing. And I'd like to hear from some of you. What are your takeaways from the story from the story listening, and also from your own takeaways about this? If you want to write it on the chat, or you want to participate. Maybe we can raise our hands with you.
I think, do you want to maybe pause the presentation for a moment so we can see everyone? It makes it a little bit
Yes.
easier.
Much better.
Wonderful. There we go.
Yeah.
Well, I can maybe share what I experienced as I was in a breakout room. I ended up being in the soft front, hard back room. And I think a big reflection for us in the room was how relevant that conceptually is just to everyday life, and how valuable that is in everyday life, and how we show up that way as coaches, but as people to each other, and what that brings out, and the possibilities that it creates, and the learning or the healing or whatever is needed. It almost creates space for whatever is needed in the moment. It's kind of the takeaway that I have from that.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'll share from our group. One of the takeaways, we talked about a few different things pertaining to each of us. I know with respect to me, one of the concepts that I found interesting was trying to figure out a way to recreate the same kind of impact. I mean, when you're dealing with someone who is on death's door, it creates a whole different dynamic into how you want to listen to somebody, because you realize moments are precious and they only have a few left, and they really get your attention. But I don't necessarily have the strength or, some to respects the time to go and spend 6 months working with people in a hospice. So how to recreate the same experience. That was my perspective, and other perspectives that were raised in our room were some of the pain from the immigrant experience, the difficulties and trauma that come along with it was one of the things that were discussed in the story listening. But in the story listening group, I think we did a great job of listening to each other, right? And realizing that when we listen and do something, how story listening might differ from active listening is that with active listening, you might get snippets here or there. But with story listening, you give someone the space to finish out the completion of their story without stepping into, giving them the space, kind of like you mentioned in the beginning during your presentation. It's critical in coaching to be able to do that.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you. Yeah. I was going through my feeder on Instagram the other day, and I found this video from Sudguru, and it was a beautiful video. It was morning, and he said that just waking up is a miracle, and made me realize that sometimes, to your point, it's when we know the person, it's in a situation where it's in hospice and it's already declared that that person is at the end of their life. That's one thing, but applying the same framework to all the people we talk to, because in reality, neither of us know when it's going, right? It's really key. We don't know. Actually, we don't know. And one of my key takeaways from that training is that in reality, we don't know. So what if I use that awareness to live my life like it's the last day? So yeah, thanks for that. I don't want to leave without reading you this. This is a love, and I'm going to share these slides with you. But this is something that I found very profound. As we stay with emotions, right? It says, suffering is exacerbated by avoidance. The body carries with it any undigested pain. Our attempts at self-protection cause us to live in a small, dark, cramped corner of our lives. We accept a limited perspective of the situation and a restricted view of ourselves. We cling to what is familiar simply in order to reassert control, thinking we can fend off what we fear will be intolerable. When we push back, hoping to get rid of a difficult experience, we're actually encapsulating it. In short, what we resist persists. And that's Franz Ostareski. And I'm going to share that in my resources. There's some books that were very fundamental for me. And I think that any coach can really benefit from that. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other, as we are coming to the close of Fiorella, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation and a focus on something that is so present for, or so relevant to so many in so many parts of our lives. So thank you for bringing that. Thank you all for joining. Any last minute questions or comments? I see some notes in the chat. Thank you, Fiorella. If there's any other questions or any way for us to reach you, I know you said you'd share information. It'll be part of
it'll be part of that. Yeah. So I don't, let me see. I have it here.
Okay.
I have to go back into this. And these are some of the resources. But I can compose, if any one of you have something in particular that you want to put in the chat, I can get you more of that.
May I just ask a question? I know we're dealing primarily with physical death, but to what extent, when we're dealing with these principles, can we offer it extended to other elements of separation and loss, which all engender grief? I'm talking about separation, divorce. There are clients who are grieving over, it might be loss of a job, for example. And I'm thinking in what way we can use these steps in our coaching practice to these other processes.
Thank you, Georgia. Thanks for the question. That's actually a great point. This is grief for physical and so many kinds of death, separation, losses. Actually, I went into that myself as a result of having not grieved the loss of my dad, and also because I had some relational issues, but it's and I have a teenager daughter, so I'll be soon. It was kind of a pre-emptiness, uneasiness. So it was a bunch of things but we are grieving in many spaces in our society, right? It's the loss, it's the separation, it's the polarization, it's the ability to the seeing disconnected from each other, even from dialogue, and that carries a grief for us. So yeah, we can use this for all kinds of the losses and griefs. Thank you for that wonderful question.
Thank you all. I do think we have to exit the room, unfortunately. Thank you for that wonderful question, Georgia. And it gives us all something to think about in relation to this presentation. Thank you, everyone. We look forward to meeting as many of you as are local in the Miami or West Palm Beach area at our live event on Thursday.
Yes. Thank you. See you there.
Thank you for being here.